Thank you for staying with us. Our home stretch, artist of the week couldn't make it, but we have another artist of the week who'll be looking at, well, not artist, well, some kind of art. When she comes in, she'll tell you exactly the kind of art she deals with. The art of dealing with the poverty situation in the country. Now, the World Poverty Clock revealed that by 2030, the percentage of Nigeria's population living in extreme poverty will increase from 4.2% to 5.5%, representing a total of 120 million people living under $1.9 per day. With this revelation, how much can be done to change the situation? How much can you and I, government, I'd like to add that part, you and I, don't shift everything to government. We have a role to play. How can we help to resolve this entire matter? Okay, so to the artist of today, our artist of the week is not a singer, but we're looking at is an artist that's going to help us sort out this poverty thing. Victoria O'Harry, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure to be here at last.
So I'm going to start with the art of navigating the traffic here today.
I left my house 7:03.
Okay, that's later than I did.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, so drove for 4.5 hours to get to the station. So what does that tell you? Sends a message. You know, it's not just about saying the governor is this or the governor is that, but we need to shout out that Lagos is
Overpopulated?
It's not overpopulated. If Lagos were to be a clock, I would say the clock has stopped ticking.
Wow.
Clock. This is, somebody needs to hear this. Somebody needs to know that Lagosians have never witnessed governance of lifeless proportions, as we see it now. Somebody needs to say it in clear terms.
You're using hard words.
It's not hard words.
You should also understand the climatic conditions that might be affecting reparation and all those amelioration of the situation.
Yeah, but we didn't get here today. The rains became much more intense like 2 months ago. So what you see today is an attestation, like a report card of what has been. So we're discussing poverty, we're looking at the monthly receipts Lagos gets, we're looking at the IGR of Lagos State. Over the years, and in 2 months, we're talking about climatic conditions. Climatic conditions didn't start.
No, why I raise that up is because some 2 months back, some repairs were done on some roads. Now, with the rains and the amount of water level, the rising water levels and all of that, as we know, or you might not be aware that the water table in Lagos is quite high. So it will be affecting whatever constructions that might be going on.
Yeah, the quality of repairs will determine the durability of the repairs.
Okay.
So if you do cheap repairs, you get cheap returns. If you do sustainable, durable repairs, they will also stand the test of time.
But how does that apply to the rising rate of poverty in the country?
Yeah, you know, poverty is, part of the problem with poverty is that it's not framed as an issue, as like a binding obligation on states, on the federal government, on the local government, across all tiers. Poverty is not just a question of throwing money at problems, cash transfers, or having big budgets or having even a lot of resources. So poverty is a question that we need to look at in terms of what should happen. It's a bread and, in simple terms, a bread and butter question. So until governance is framed as a bread and butter issue, how does building roads put food on the table? How does building schools put food on the table? How do elections put food on the table? Because the food in the stomach is how people, as long as people are hungry, no matter how beautiful a city looks, it's hard for that citizen to connect with
the
beauty of the city. So until we get to that point, and part of the problem is also legal, part of the problem is structural, part of the problem is systemic. So when I say legal, our constitution did not make social and economic priorities like a binding obligation on states and federal government. What do I mean? Chapter 2 of the Constitution of Nigeria did create a lot of provisions, but those provisions encapsulate a number of objectives that are progressively realizable under the directive principles of state policy. So the state policies direct state, to encourage states, obligate states to direct state policy towards providing food, providing jobs, shelter, pensions, employment, just making life livable. But those provisions, that the whole of the rights provided for under that section, there is a clause that restrains the courts from entertaining complaints from citizens if you experience deprivations. So that is a legal question.
The Constitution.
The Constitution. So those rights, because they are not justiciable, so it reduces those directive principles to like mere positive direction on states, of which if they don't do anything, there is no consequence. There is not a huge consequence. Then there is also the other part, which is structural. And when I say which is structural, it also looks at, it's not looking at resources, we're looking at the resources, even available resources. How are they spent? What are states spending on? You can see my focus of my conversation is mainly on states, because we seem to focus a lot of attention on the federal government, but poverty question cannot be addressed at the federal level.
But then there are those who are concerned that if you look at the Constitution, again, back to that document, it puts the exclusive list, what is given to the federal government, makes it difficult for even the state to deal with this matter of poverty.
Yeah, that is true. That is largely true, because a lot of people say state IGR, apart from a few states, most states generate just very little, add a little to their monthly revenues. But it is true, the big issues, the macroeconomics like aviation, mines, oil, natural gas, federal government has taken over those issues. But the little like agriculture, healthcare, there needs to be maybe more creativity about how states can exploit the potentials in those other areas. Like, let's say agriculture. There is enormous potential that can emerge from agriculture. We have the land. When I say we have the land, there are so many states with enormous land mass. I went to Abakaliki 2 weeks ago, and I think it's one of the states I've been to where you can drive for like 45 minutes. Land on the right, on the left. Green, unfarmed, unused. And that is potential, just lying there.
But you mentioned Abakaliki. Abakaliki has Abakaliki rice. Cross River State has rice seedlings. I mean, these two states, I use these two states now because they are states, and some other states in the north that are investing in agriculture and indeed looking for foreign investment in agriculture. You think that will help in any way? How would that translate to the earning power of those in the rural areas?
It will translate, but the only problem is that the population is rising and majority of those people engage in subsistence farming. So for you to feed large numbers of people is not a hoe and machete issue. The farming has really transited to mechanized agriculture, where people, if you're to feed the huge population that states have or the government has, it means that you need to provide some kind of technology. You need to provide some kind of assistance to rural farmers to enable them to produce at the large scale. And that is where the turnover comes from. So if that type of environment, conducive environment, is not available, people will continue to farm, but at the subsistence level.
What about the infrastructure? Because when they do farm at the rural areas, bringing it out becomes another problem. And then the value chain in agriculture. Is it enough to just invest in agriculture? Or the other side of it, the processing?
It's not just the processing. The infrastructure, I agree with you, needs to be present. And that's why I do not think that the problem, the cause of poverty in Nigeria is resources. The problem is how those resources are spent. So if a state has invested in agriculture, has a rice farm, it means that the state should also involve in road transportation. It means that the state should also invest in storage. It means that the state will also invest in preservation. So having a rice farm alone cannot address a problem because that food needs to leave the areas where they are farmed to areas where they are needed. So the supply chain needs to be, looked into. But I think there needs to be a dedicated effort into looking into paying attention to what states are doing with the resources that they have. NITI just published their fiscal allocation and statutory disbursement audit that looked at 9 pilot states, how much they have received between 2012 to 2016, and what has happened to that money. So when you look at a state like Akwa Ibom has received about 1.5 trillion between 2012 and 2016, then the other question you might ask yourself, does the development on the ground match 1.5 trillion? Then you can also look at other states, Nasarawa, Imo, Delta, Bayelsa, all of those states. Some of those states have received hundreds of billions of naira. So I want to share an example with you why poverty will not. We went to Imo State to look at what they've been doing with all the money that has been allocated for housing development and to compare that to the number of housing stock that has been added, during that period. So we looked at the state budget between 2010 and 2017, and we could track about 42 billion has been allocated to the housing sector. What happened to the 42 billion? I'm going to share some of them with you. We have the renovation of Governor's Lodge. That has taken about 130 million. We have the Deputy Governor's Lodge. Has taken about 35 million. We have the reconstruction of Governor's Office. That has taken about 142 million. We have the new Government House Governor's Lodge. That has taken about 610 million. Then we have the new Government House Complex in New Owerri. That's taken about 1.5 billion. So I won't read out everything, but we could see that over 70% of that money went into buildings for Office of the Excellency, Her Excellency, their conference room, the Governor's Lodge, the Commissioner's Quarters, the Speaker's Lodge. A state with that type of spending, I've not looked at what's happening in other states, but if there's a chance that other states have similar spending culture, then the result is already obvious.
42 billion between
2010 and 2017.
And 2017. And how much do you say, what percentage went to?
About 76% went into just servicing the executive.
And of the executive, just a few.
And it's just a few officials. So, and let me even give you another concerning tradition. The governor, before 2010, the governor, that was Achiku Denwa, there was a good sum of money spent on renovating the governor's office. Then when Ikedi Ohakin came on board, he did some renovation and decided to relocate the governor's office elsewhere. When Rochas came on board, he felt that that building was not befitting. He constructed a new one. We have a new governor. And a couple of engineers have looked at what the last governor has done, and they have certified the building to be structurally deficient, and there's going to be another governor's office. So probably the successor to the current governor will also build another governor's office.
This is just one state.
This is just one state. So I'm just looking at, we've not looked at other states to see their spending habits, but if the spending habits are anything close to what we have seen, it means that the question of poverty has nothing to do with resources.
Okay. We'll take a moment, and when we come back, we'll look at how do we deal with this, find a solution to all this matter. Please join us again. Thank you for staying with us. Our closing moment on Sunrise, and we're looking at resolving the poverty issue. And now, Mr. Harry, that report by Space for Change on you said 9 pilot states. You just mentioned one state and what you've been able to draw. You said over 70% of the budget is going to taking care of just the executive.
That is for Imo. That is the budget for housing development. The budget allocated to the Ministry of Housing Development.
42 billion between 2010 and 2017.
17, yeah.
And 70% of it is just going to take care of
the executive.
The executive.
And the legislature partly.
But so the question is not necessarily about the resources, but about the management of the resources. So let's look at management of resources. In the management of, in governance, there are three tiers of governance: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The persons that determine how much the executive is supposed to expend are the legislatures. But do you think they're even concerned about the management of these resources to even help in managing it so that it can trickle down to that man out there that needs it?
Yeah, that's what needs to happen. Some kind of legislative autonomy, first of all, is needed, for the legislature to be able to perform their roles efficiently.
But where there is, because right now we have legislative autonomy.
Yeah, at least their own financial autonomy.
They have their own.
It's not all. That is on paper. Many of them, when they still have to depend on the executive to allocate resources to them, so it causes some pandering. And there's so many unwritten things that they can't say out there. But the truth is that states need to develop appetite for engagement. Under the last republic, at the national level, at the federal level, we saw that there was, at least that assembly demonstrated some level of strong appetite for legislative executive engagement, interaction over budget, spending, inviting committees, to the House, inviting public officials to some committees to come provide some explanation. That tradition at the federal level needs to trickle down, where we can see rigorous engagement between the state executive and the state legislature, having strong debates about proposals, whatever that is contained in the appropriation document. I do not know of any state where that happens. I know it happens, at least some good practice at the federal level, but if it doesn't trickle down to the states, we are going to continue to see monies managed in ways that require us asking a lot of hard questions.
Victoria, we never have enough time for this, so most likely we'll find time to come back to this conversation on poverty. Yeah. But someone mentioned something earlier today about off-camera. Talked about in Nigeria, we have, he's a Canadian, and he says, it's only in this country where he has seen young Nigerians, from as long as they can think, they are thinking how to set up this, how to set up a business, how to make more money, how to change the narrative, how to change things around them. Is there a way, because that might also help in solving this poverty thing, is there a way that these young people can be given room to express themselves? Do you think government is ready to allow them room to express themselves so that, if I am 25 and I'm older than 25, and I'm thinking of setting up a company that would employ 20 people and pay them well, pay them above minimum wage, so there has to be some kind of incentive on the part of government to help me take care of that part. Is there something that can be done? Because it's not just about government handling or dealing with poverty. It's about the individuals as well. What can we do?
Yeah, for that to happen, we need to frame solutions a bit differently. When you speak, when I listen to governors and the president and public officials generally speak, you would hear a lot about, we want to attract foreign investment. We want to do this, foreign direct investment, foreign investors, because mindset in official circles is conditioned into believing that foreign investment is better. So imagine, look at the free trade zones, for instance, and look at the enormous incentives you give to foreign investors to come and invest. Reroute those incentives and give it to local entrepreneurs. Give it to people operating in the informal economy and see what comes out of it. That is an idea that needs to be tested. So until that thinking, that even in the course of our conversation, you mentioned that we need to open the space for foreign investment. It is not foreigners. Foreigners are also repatriating no matter the profit that they make, they repatriate the bulk of it to their country. So there is an element of job creation. There's an element of benefits that come with foreign investment. But the ultimate purpose of an investor is to make profit in your country and repatriate to his country.
So if you create the room for your own people,
your own people, particularly lots of young Nigerians have the appetite, they have the energy, they have the zeal, but the incentives need to reach them. If you are giving tax waiver to a foreign investor, if you are revoking land and giving to a foreign investor, try that also with your local entrepreneur and see what results that come out of it.
Thank you so much, Victoria Ohere of Space for Change, for coming to share your thoughts as regards the rate of poverty and resolving that matter. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having
Now,
me.
this is where we draw the curtain on today's show, Sunrise. I want to thank you for letting us be a part of your morning. It's been a hectic morning, but hey, it's also an exciting morning. I'll take this straight as go. Thinking without the box says rice is fast becoming the next big thing after oil in Nigeria. The focus on rice is, though, hey, the focus should be on how to build a better society, better incentives for everyone to thrive, especially the local indigenous investors, those with the ideas, 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds with crazy, beautiful ideas that can help to solve this matter of poverty, but they need incentive. Hey, you be your own incentive as much as you can. Be the incentive for your neighbor until we get the leadership to hear and begin to help to make things better. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. We'll come away again. Bye-bye.